Imagine you're a French woman in the 1940s. You've got a degree in philosophy and you're about to write a book that will be banned by the Vatican but cemented in feminist history. Welcome to the world of Simone de Beauvoir. One of the first things you'll find out when looking into Beauvoir is that she was in an open relationship with philosopher and playwright Jean-Paul Sartre for practically her entire life. Sartre described as, and I just feel like this should be read aloud, a great writer and philosopher, but also a 4 11" tall, wall-eyed speed freak, by the New York Times in 1990. When I first read that, I could not stop laughing because Sartre was catching strays for what? Imagine being described in the New York Times as a wall-eyed speed freak, 4 11" mind you. Absolutely diabolical. How can you have a career after that? For a long time, this relationship cast a shadow over how the public viewed Beauvoir, and not always in a good way. She was widely treated as Sartre's alter ego, in part because she initially cast herself that way, describing her work as an extension of his. Even at the time of her death in 1986, she still wasn't recognized as a philosopher in her own right. And it's only in more recent years that there's been a pushback. Academics drawing attention to the fact that while Beauvoir was kind of busy inventing modern feminism, Sartre was busy writing about feeling nauseous. Did you feel nauseous, Sartre? Which, okay, maybe that's a bit unfair on Sartre, but you get my point. So backstory aside, what did Beauvoir actually write? What were her famous ideas, and why is she now considered a philosopher with a huge feminist legacy? One is not born, but rather becomes a woman. This is her most famous line from her book, The Second Sex. It reflects her view that identity and the roles given with it are not something innate, but something given to us by society. Beauvoir specifically means this in the social role of womanhood. That is, the traits associated with being a woman, such as being the caring figure in the family, being submissive, or being need to be told what to do.
Where shall I go? What shall I do? What do we do? What do we do now?
Beauvoir says that these are not biological traits of women, but women are constructed to act in those ways because of social rules, expectations, or internalized oppression. In other words, nature versus nurture. It's not in a woman's nature to act with these traits, but they're created through a woman's nurture.
You will learn how to be a young lady.
Beauvoir is pretty much highlighting how systemic sexism operates and the roles that women are confined to from the moment of their birth. Luckily, this concept is pretty well established in 2025. It doesn't sound too shocking or surprising to the modern ear. But in 1949, when The Second Sex was first published, this challenged biological, religious, and social norms. And people freaked out, especially the Vatican. According to the New York Times, a Vatican newspaper claimed that this book contained a hidden poison, where readers might be damaged with their obscene descriptions and immoral ideas. But on this channel, we risk corruption, so let's move on to what else Beauvoir has said. Man is the one, woman is the other. Beauvoir pointed out that a big part of being a woman, according to societal traits, is living an existence relative to men. Again, this might look like taking care of a man's family and house or following men round for their careers.
Make the evening his. Never complain if he comes home late or goes out to dinner without you. Let him talk first. Remember, his topics of conversation are more important than yours.
But why might women do this? That's what Beauvoir wanted to find out. Beauvoir claimed that it was because men, historically in society, have been seen as the default human, and women exist to build a life around that default. In doing so, Beauvoir says that women become the other, like the deviant human prototype, which makes it sound way cooler than it really is. Beauvoir said it's this acting like the other which has caused women to be categorized as objects rather than treated as their own free subject. For example, in so many of the older films, men are the lead with their complex emotions and discussions, and women are just there.
You women just don't understand.
Interestingly, Beauvoir builds on Hegel's master-slave dialectic, which is to say, to be a master, you need recognition from another subject. For men to solidify their position in society as the default human and master, they need a subject to recognize them in this way.
Remember, he is the master of the house, and as such will always exercise his will with fairness and truthfulness. You have no right to question him.
By being reduced to the other, women become that needed subject. With this argument about women being the other, Beauvoir is exploring the root of women's oppression, effectively pointing out a potential reason why systemic sexism exists. So, are women really free? Can women ever be free? At this time, Sartre was out here claiming that all human beings are fundamentally free, as in free to make our own choices. Beauvoir is like, yeah, honey.
Et même vous qui êtes théoriquement, idéologiquement tout à fait partisan de l'émancipation des femmes et tout ça, eh bien vous ne partagez malgré tout pas ce qu'elles appellent, et que j'appellerai avec elles, le vécu des femmes. Il y a des choses que vous n'arrivez pas à comprendre.
We might be free to make our own choices, but are those choices really ours? We might be looking at a case of social conditioning. Women may be internalizing oppressive norms and acting out of them unconsciously, making choices that neatly fit what's expected of them, even if just subconsciously doing so. Of course, it's really hard to just break away from that. If your role and traits as a woman is so deeply ingrained within you, how do you know which choices you've made because you really want to do them, or which choices you've made because of subconscious societal expectation? Oh, Beauvoir, help us. What do we do? Well, she advises everyone to live ethically. And what does she mean by this? She says, when you can, recognize yours and others' freedom. In other words, the oppressed shouldn't turn around and oppress others to try and win back their freedoms. She's saying that for all of us to be truly and fundamentally free, none of us can be oppressed, even those who may have oppressed us in the past. Finally, Beauvoir's name is standing on its own without Sartre's overshadowing it, which in many ways is ironic given her whole life's work was about women being reduced to supporting roles, and yet she herself was cast as Sartre's +1. But I think the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy put it perfectly, where they said, Beauvoir's life and work are reminders of the concrete contradictions and ambiguities we all face, even in love. In my opinion, it makes her all the more interesting. She laid the foundation for second wave feminism and gender theory by exposing the invisible power dynamics in society and the way women are conditioned to make certain choices. So what do you think of Beauvoir? I'm a big fan, but I'm curious to hear what you think. Let me know in the comments.